Little Nightmares, Horror Adorer. Here we go.
Here we go.
How is it?
How we go?
Here we go.
Here we go.
How we go?
Oh.
I played Little Nightmares once with you.
Right, yeah.
You've played it once, or you watched something?
I watched you guys get through about 20 minutes of it and fell asleep on the couch. Not because I was bored, it's because I had a migraine, and I never get migraines.
Glowing endorsement.
Yeah.
You fell asleep after
So I
20
loved the game.
Wait, so do you even recall what you saw of the first
Oh yeah, it was gorgeous. It was really cool. I had to fall asleep because my head was going to explode.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And then I was kind of in and out of sleep because it was like
oh boy.
4 o'clock
Yeah,
in the
you guys
morning.
played it all night.
And then I remember just hearing you guys like scream because you guys were so scared. I was like, I'm so glad I'm not up right now. I'm like, nope, not gonna open my eyes even though I'm kind of up.
He was just hiding under a blanket.
I was
No,
like,
no.
Tell me when it's over.
I was like, ah! I'm like, oh god,
Well, I
no.
can't remember. Did we play the first game and the DLC, or was it just the first
I
game?
think we just did the first one, and you told me about the DLC. So
Right,
I don't really know
think
much
you
about that.
had the DLC yet.
Oh no, I definitely did.
Oh, you did?
You
Yeah,
showed me
'cause
all the artwork. And
Yeah,
stuff.
that I was up for.
Because I was
Which is really cool.
I was on board with like Little Nightmares immediately, and that's where I got little there because she came with like the deluxe edition and
Zoom in, camera one.
yeah, little 6-figure. And then I bought the season pass and was waiting basically
So
like
cool.
months at a time until they put like each chapter out. So because it's a small company, some of them got pushed,
I remember you said
and I was just
that.
like waiting and waiting, and then it's supposed to come out, and it's like, it's next month. I was like, no, I need to see what happens. But like the DLC is great because it runs along the story of the first one, and so it's almost like this is almost like Little Nightmares 3 to me because that one's almost its own contained story within it. I love the interpretive story of all this. It's like a dark fairy tale, and I like how you can kind of interpret it your own way, and the music is so good. Like just the simplicity of the visuals and everything. I'm just like so drawn into all of this. And if you know anything about like Japanese horror stories and stuff, like that's all incorporated into like the imagery and the unfolding of that first story. I just found it so engaging. I was very impressed with the first game, especially from like a smaller company.
Yeah. The quality level on it doesn't feel like an indie game.
No, really not. And like it's still very simple. Like they're very simple puzzles and stuff, but it doesn't feel like they're not giving you anything, or it's just like we're getting by with like the most simplest
We're relying on a gimmick. It's like a very well fleshed out game. At least the first 20 minutes.
You love the pacing.
The pacing was the best part. I really got the gist of it. It was a pretty horrifying thing to fall asleep to. Like if my head wasn't splitting in half, I don't think I would have been able to fall asleep.
Honestly, you're probably lucky that you only watched 20 minutes of it because it only gets like creepy.
I remember like waking up intermittently and looking at the screen and be like, nope.
You guys are screaming. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Well, there was the one thing when you were like going through like the orphanages beds, and there was like the weird fucking lady like lumbering through, and you had to hide in the shadows. I remember waking up and seeing that and being like, fuck no, this is like a straight up nightmare I've had before. And it's somebody brought it to life, put it on the screen, and I happened to wake up during that 2-minute span when you guys were playing it. So
Was that was the one with like the super long arms? That one?
I don't think it was the long arms one. There was the baby one with the big like baby doll. It could have been interspliced with my actual nightmare. I can't tell the difference.
That might have been the chef, because that one was more of like
I
a
was
lumbering
just about to say
one.
there was a guy with long arms, and yes, I believe he was the chef.
Maybe that.
No, that guy was so that was like, I think he's called the caretaker or something like that. And yeah, he would, because like basically, well, I guess should we give away spoilers of the first game?
Yeah.
I would say if this at all sounds interesting, go and like play that game. It's so good.
Yeah.
The way in which the story unfolds, really creepy and cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you don't want to hear anything, just don't listen to further than this.
Sure.
But yeah, so in the first one,
If you make enough coffee tonight, we'll probably just end up doing the first one.
Hey, that's true. I mean,
Keep the cameras rolling. Let's just,
That's true. I did put on another pot, so we're good.
but yeah, it starts off with you just as like waking up as 6, and you're discovering shit in the same way that she's kind of, I think, discovering what's going on. And yeah, the first part is the orphanage where you kind of see beds of children or whatever. And then I think he's the caretaker, comes in and he's just kind of making sure everyone's in their bed and there's just like unsettling, but it eventually shows that he's packaging up like the bodies of these children and sending them off to the kitchen for it to be these bodies of children to be prepared for food and stuff.
The image that no matter from that whole night, the image was just after all the build up and stuff, the people the dining hall.
Yes.
That thing of like the people reaching and like the grubby hands and shit, and you're just running like, and you just know what's happening. And you're piecing it together, and there's just like these fat, ugly, grotesque things. Like oh my god,
it
sticks
felt
in
like
my
a
head.
lot of the horror elements were that something's happening right off screen.
Right.
It gives you a lot of visual stuff, and then just gives you like, but even worse shit is happening right outside the frame. Because a lot of the stuff was like tall and you're really small and everything was like elevated, or there were things off screen happening that you knew were even scarier than the shit they were showing you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, because it's right down with you as the small character, and it chose very good small moments to pull out and give you a little more of what. Because I think you caught on to like it's a ship way sooner than I did when I was playing. Like
They gave you just enough to piece it together.
Yeah. And then the
things.
reveal of like you're on the Maw in the ocean, and then people are coming, like these tourists are coming.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about, like the Japanese like horror of like these like just obese, horrible people, just like people with money who have come here to just like devour to a grotesque.
The gluttony of it is what got me on like a visceral
It's
level.
repulsive.
Just the overconsumption and like, not to mention what they're actually eating is like it's just all so fucked up.
And the noises,
yeah,
like, the sound
noises
design is
yeah.
so good.
The noises is what really sticks with you. I feel like, that, and also to your point, too, my favorite part about horror, and I think when horror does the best, is when it leaves more to your imagination. That's why I don't like horror gore, or anything like that. Like that's not my thing. Even though that like still those images don't get out of your head, but like when you have to imagine something, I feel like you end up thinking of something scarier than somebody could like create and show you. Like for me, I can imagine like some awful shit where I'm like, and then that sticks with you because it's your own mind creating it. It's like that's
especially because they're leading you to think about something specific.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to see the children being eaten, but you see the tables and you see the hands and you know the story and you go, oh my god, and you just hear the sounds and it's like you can picture something in your mind's eye more than anything they could ever show you, or would be allowed to show you, honestly.
Well, and then there's also that illusion that's kind of used in like Psycho or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's like you feel like you saw more than you actually did too. Like just the grime of that world, it feels like you saw like, oh, I saw a child getting ground up into sausage. I was like, no, you don't. It's just it feels like you did.
But they made you think that you did.
Which I love when that's
leading
done like
imagination.
So, any thoughts about what the second one is? What we're doing? Because I haven't heard anything. I haven't read anything about
Me
it.
neither.
I don't know anything about the story or anything. I don't know where they could because I felt like it was very self-contained and like
it totally
I don't know about
was.
the DLC, but I feel like it had closure, it had resolution. So I like
The DLC is going along the exact storyline of the first one. It's just you are basically playing another child in the same thing. It's just other thing. There's very clever connective things too, but it's very separate in the same way. But you're still just like on the Maw, going through a different scenario. You're more like closely connected to the chain of stuff rather than being like Six, who's kind of on the side.
Got it. Okay.
I have my own theories, but it's mainly due to like her name and the real interpretive nature. It's a fairy tale. You wake up, you don't know who you are. You go along, and then you find out that your mother is the one kind of who's the head of all of this. She's in her room, and there's portraits of clearly you covered up. Like, so it's very like Queen and Snow White sort of scenario.
Yeah.
And you end up killing and devouring your mother's powers. I found it interesting that her name is Six, is this like a cycle? Like
That's what I was wondering. That was my thought too, where it's like, oh, that was the 6th generation of this cycle resolving
she
itself.
is kind of devouring 5.
Yeah,
in
right.
a way.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because of how contained it was and the cyclical nature of it.
Well, maybe she was devouring 7. You know, maybe it's going down, and 7 had 8, 9.
Oh my god.
To ever think that Trev's
had real insight. I thought you had real insight.
That's how you get him. You hook him in with the fan theory, and then you straight to the fucking bones.
but I don't know, because I mean, even just from
I gotta go home.
Yeah. Because even this title right here, it's like we're not just on the boat.
So maybe we'll get an idea of what the people that come to the tourists to live and stuff like that.
Because 6 ends up killing everyone, basically, or it's implied. Like she's walking through the dining hall, and those creatures are coming to try and eat her again, and she's just effortlessly like snapping their necks and walking, and it's real slow and ominous. It's great.
Oh fuck.
And the end of it is just her standing at the top of the mall, which is almost like this tiny island just on the peak of this big barreled ship that's just out in the sea, and she's just standing there, and it just ends on like this very kind of sad, somber note where she's alone. Oh, and there's also the little like gnome characters throughout too,
right.
which kind of adds to that like fairy tale feeling of it all.
Those are the collectible things, right? Or no?
They're like the little, like, sort of faceless children with hats that you can, like, hug.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's like the only
it's like
warmth.
a piece of joy.
Yeah.
The little speck of light in the madness.
Ew,
Right?
It's, like, really good at, I don't know, not making it too bleak, but it feels very much to me like a grim fairy tale. Like a very old school kind of, like, bleakness with I'm not 100% sure what the moral is, and I like that it's not explicit.
No, it's very ambiguous, and you can kind of take your own. Again, it opens it up to theorizing and talking about it, which is like the best kind of storytelling, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's a different type of storytelling. Sometimes it's good to have a very linear narrative that's explained to you, and like, no, we have this complete story that we want to present to you. And then others where it's open to interpretation. I feel like it's...
But I think with a game like this, where you're opening up the horror to the person's imagination, you should also open the story to their imagination.
Right,
I'm not making a pun here.
I was waiting for it.
So then,
Go on! And what next? It's like the best jokes. The best ones, wait for it. Wait for the delivery.
But yeah, that's why I'm excited for this. I do not know what to expect from this one.
Yeah.
And I also don't know if it could really match or top the first one, because it was so unique. So, and what I love, Trev, I think you'd really appreciate this too, because I would listen to this soundtrack in the car. Like I had the soundtrack and I would just play it and just like watch people as I was driving, and it just gives like this weird sensation of like everyone's monsters, and, like the world sucks.
I don't know why I got horrible road rage. It makes no sense.
But what I really appreciate about it, and it really comes through when listening to the soundtrack on its own, even more so than in the game, I feel like, because you can almost hear more details, is they incorporated sounds of like the ship and kitchen into the instrumentals of it. So like there's pots and pans actually being played, and like, or there's like creaking pipes for like earlier on score that go along with like you being, it's so cleverly designed.
So should we give it a go? I'm excited it's going to start off, but yeah, all right.